The sky above Detroit was unusually dark that evening, the kind of darkness that seemed to swallow every trace of light. Jason Carter stood in his backyard, staring at the sky with a mix of curiosity and unease. For weeks, strange reports had flooded the news. Unidentified objects hovering over major cities, mysterious signals picked up by satellites, and now whispers of alien life. Jason wasn't sure what to believe. He was just a mechanic, fixing cars and trying to make ends meet. But tonight, everything changed. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Jason turned toward the source of the sound, his heart pounding. A fleet of enormous ships descended from the clouds, their metallic surfaces shimmering like liquid silver. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen, smooth, curved, and impossibly large. The ships hovered silently over the city, casting long shadows across the streets below. People stepped out of their homes, pointing and gasping, as the ships blocked out the stars. Then it happened. A bright light shot down from one of the ships, illuminating the center of the city. In that beam of light, a figure appeared, a tall, insect-like being with elongated limbs and glowing green eyes. Its voice echoed through the air, not from speakers but seemingly inside everyone's minds. "We are the Exitherians," it said, its tone cold and emotionless. "Your species has been deemed primitive and unworthy of independent existence. From this moment forward, Earth belongs to the Exitherian Empire." Jason clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. Primitive, unworthy. He glanced around at the faces of his neighbors. Some looked terrified, others confused, but most just stared blankly, too stunned to react. His wife, Laura, stepped outside, her arms crossed tightly against the chill. "What do we do, Jason?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't have an answer. All he could do was watch as the Exitherians began landing smaller craft in the city, their soldiers marching out in perfect formation. Each step they took seemed to echo like thunder, a reminder of their power and dominance. Over the next few days, the Exitherians wasted no time asserting control. They set up massive machines in open fields and near factories, ripping apart the land to extract resources. The humans who tried to resist were quickly subdued, their protests silenced with weapons that emitted piercing beams of energy. Jason watched helplessly as his town transformed into a mining operation. The once bustling streets were now empty, save for the occasional patrol of Exitherian drones. It felt like the world had ended, replaced by something far worse. But Jason couldn't sit idly by. One night, while Laura slept, he grabbed a flashlight and crept outside. He had heard rumors of a group forming to fight back, a small band of survivors determined to reclaim their planet. Jason didn't know if he believed in their chances, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't going to go down without a fight. As he walked through the quiet streets, his mind raced with questions. Could they really stand up to such an advanced enemy? And if they did, what would it cost? When he reached the meeting point, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, he found a handful of people already there. Among them was Sarah Bennett, a former soldier with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She nodded when she saw him, recognizing the determination in his expression. "You're either very brave or very stupid to show up here," she said, her voice low but firm. Jason shrugged. "Maybe both." As the group exchanged ideas and plans, Jason realized that they might actually have a chance. Humans may have been labeled primitive, but they had something that Exitherians didn't: creativity, adaptability, and sheer willpower. For the first time since the invasion, Jason felt a spark of hope. The road ahead would be dangerous, but he was ready to fight for his home, his family, and the future of humanity. In the days following their daring act of resistance, Jason and his group knew they couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. The explosion at the mining site had drawn attention, and Cytherian patrols were already combing the area, searching for those responsible. Quietly, they packed up what little they had and moved deeper into the city, seeking refuge where they could regroup and plan their next steps. It wasn't until they reached an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town that they realized they weren't alone. A faint click broke the silence, a sound Jason recognized all too well. Someone was watching them. "Stay where you are," a voice called out, firm but measured. From the shadows stepped two figures, both carrying weapons but not raising them. One was a woman with sharp eyes and short brown hair, while the other was a man wearing a patched-up leather jacket. The woman lowered her weapon slightly when she saw Jason's face. "You're the ones who destroyed the mining site, aren't you?" she asked, her tone curious rather than hostile. Jason nodded cautiously. "Who wants to know?" he replied, his voice steady but guarded. The woman introduced herself as Mia Foster, explaining that she had once worked on secret government projects before the invasion. She claimed to have access to classified blueprints for advanced technology, tools that could help level the playing field against the Ithurians. The man beside her was Kyle Dawson, a pilot whose spacecraft had been grounded just months before the aliens arrived. Together, they had been surviving on their own, gathering resources, and planning their next move. At first, Sarah was hesitant to trust them. "How do we know you're not working with the Ithurians?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. But Mia quickly earned their confidence by showing them a datapad filled with detailed schematics. "If we combine your courage with my knowledge and Kyle's skills," Maya said softly, "we might actually stand a chance." Over the next few days, the group worked together, turning Maya's plans into reality. Using scraps salvaged from old cars and broken electronics, they began crafting hybrid weapons designed to take down Scytherian drones and soldiers. Kyle taught Ethan how to fine-tune the devices for better accuracy, while Sarah shared her combat training with everyone. Jason found himself inspired by Mia's determination and Kyle's calm, steady presence. Slowly but surely, they started functioning like a real team. Still, tensions arose as disagreements surfaced about their next target. Sarah wanted to strike another mining site, believing it would send a clear message to the Ithurians. Mia argued that disabling communication hubs would be more effective, disrupting the invaders' ability to coordinate attacks. Jason listened carefully to both sides, reminding everyone that they needed to think strategically if they hoped to survive. "We can't afford mistakes," he said gently. "Not now." Eventually, they agreed to compromise. Their next mission would involve two objectives: sabotaging a smaller mining site while simultaneously targeting a nearby communication tower. It was risky, but they all understood the importance of hitting the Scytherians where it hurt most. As they prepared for the mission, Jason felt a quiet sense of pride. They were no longer just a scattered group of survivors. They were becoming something greater. Late one night, as he sat outside the warehouse, Jason gazed up at the stars. He thought about how much had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, he had been living an ordinary life, fixing cars and trying to make ends meet. Now he was part of a growing resistance fighting to protect humanity. The road ahead was uncertain, but Jason felt a flicker of hope. With people like Mia, Kyle, and Sarah by his side, maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide. After their successful sabotage mission, Jason and his group knew they couldn't stay in one place for long. The explosion had drawn attention, and Scytherian patrols were already sweeping through the area, searching for those responsible. They decided to move deeper into the city, hoping to find shelter and regroup. As they navigated the dark, empty streets, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't until they reached an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town that they realized they weren't alone. A soft click echoed in the silence, a sound Jason recognized all too well. Someone was aiming a weapon at them. "Don't move," a voice called out sharply. From the shadows stepped two figures, both armed and clearly prepared to defend themselves. One was a woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes, while the other was a man wearing a leather jacket patched together from scraps. The woman lowered her gun slightly when she saw Jason's face. "You're the ones who blew up that mining site, aren't you?" she asked, her tone skeptical but curious. Jason nodded cautiously. "Who wants to know?" he replied. The woman introduced herself as Mia Foster, explaining that she used to work for a secret government project before the invasion. She claimed to have access to classified blueprints for advanced weapons and defensive systems, technology that could level the playing field against the Xetherians. The man beside her was Kyle Dawson, a pilot whose spacecraft had been grounded months before the aliens arrived. Together, they had been surviving on their own, gathering resources, and planning their next move. At first, Sarah was hesitant to trust them. "How do we know you're not working for the Xetherians?" she demanded. But Maya quickly proved her loyalty by showing them a data pad filled with detailed schematics. "If we combine your bravery with my knowledge and Kyle's skills," Maya said, "we might actually stand a chance." Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to turn Maya's plans into reality. Using parts salvaged from old cars and broken electronics, they began building hybrid weapons designed to take down Xetherian drones and soldiers. Kyle taught Ethan how to modify the devices for better accuracy, while Sarah trained everyone in close combat tactics. Jason found himself impressed by Mia's determination and Kyle's calm demeanor under pressure. Slowly but surely, they started functioning like a real team. However, tensions began to rise as disagreements surfaced about their next target. Sarah wanted to strike another mining site, believing it would send a strong message to the Xetherians. Mia argued that they should focus on disabling communication hubs instead, which would disrupt the invaders' ability to coordinate attacks. Jason tried to mediate, reminding everyone that they needed to think strategically if they hoped to survive. "We can't afford to waste our resources or lose people over bad decisions," he said firmly. Despite their differences, the group eventually agreed to compromise. Their next mission would be a dual operation: sabotage a smaller mining site while simultaneously targeting a nearby communication tower. It was risky, but they all understood the importance of hitting the Xetherians where it hurt most. As they prepared for the mission, Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They were no longer just a ragtag bunch of survivors. They were becoming something more. Late one night, as he sat alone outside the warehouse, Jason looked up at the stars. He thought about how much had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, he had been an ordinary mechanic living an ordinary life. Now he was part of a growing resistance fighting to save humanity. The road ahead was uncertain, and the odds were still stacked against them, but Jason felt a flicker of hope. With people like Mia, Kyle, and Sarah by his side, maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide. The night of the dual operation arrived, and the air was thick with tension. Jason and his group moved silently through the shadows, their breaths visible in the cold night air. The plan was clear. Sarah would lead half the team to sabotage a smaller mining site, while Jason, Mia, Ethan, and Kyle targeted the nearby communication tower. They had rehearsed every step, but nothing could fully prepare them for what lay ahead. As they approached the base of the tower, Jason felt his heart pounding in his chest. The structure loomed above them, its blinking lights cutting through the darkness. Xetherian guards patrolled the perimeter, their insect-like forms casting eerie shadows on the ground. "Stay low," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. She pointed to a weak spot in the fence, a section partially torn from a previous storm. One by one, they slipped through, careful not to make a sound. Inside, the tower was guarded by automated drones that hovered lazily along predetermined paths. Kyle motioned for everyone to freeze as one passed overhead, its sensors scanning the area. When it moved on, he gave a quick nod, and they continued forward. Ethan carried a small device in his hands, its screen glowing faintly. "This will disable the security system," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. He connected the device to a panel on the wall and began typing furiously. After a few tense moments, the hum of the tower's systems faltered, then stopped entirely. "Good job, kid," Kyle muttered, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. But there was no time to celebrate. The group split up again, Mia and Ethan stayed behind to plant explosives, while Jason and Kyle headed toward the main control room. As they climbed the narrow stairs inside the tower, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The silence felt too heavy, too unnatural. When they reached the control room, they found it empty except for rows of blinking consoles. Kyle immediately got to work, using his knowledge of alien tech to upload a virus that would scramble the Scytherians' communications. Jason kept watch at the door, his weapon ready. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the building, piercing the quiet. "We've been spotted," Jason shouted. Kyle cursed under his breath, but didn't stop working. "Almost done," he yelled over the noise. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, growing louder with each passing second. Jason raised his weapon, bracing himself for a fight. Two Scytherian soldiers burst into the room, their glowing eyes locking onto him. He fired, hitting one squarely in the chest. The creature stumbled backward but didn't fall. Instead, it let out a high-pitched screech that made Jason's ears ring. Just as the second soldier advanced, Kyle finished uploading the virus. "Let's go," he shouted, grabbing Jason's arm. They sprinted out of the room, narrowly avoiding blasts from the soldiers' energy weapons. Explosions rocked the lower levels of the tower as Mia and Ethan detonated their charges. The entire structure shook violently, debris raining down around them. They barely made it out alive, collapsing onto the damp grass outside. Smoke billowed into the sky as the tower collapsed behind them. Despite the chaos, Jason couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They had done it. They had struck another blow against the invaders. But their victory was short-lived. As they regrouped with Sarah and the others near the mining site, Mia noticed something odd on her datapad. Encrypted messages were flashing across the screen, intercepted during the attack. Her face went pale as she read them aloud. "There's another alien faction, the Valens. They're coming here, and they see Earth as a battleground." The news hit everyone like a punch to the gut. The Scytherians weren't the only threat anymore. Humanity was about to face an even greater danger, and Jason knew their fight was far from over. The discovery of the Valens left Jason and his group shaken. They had barely managed to hold their ground against the Scytherians, and now another alien faction was preparing to invade Earth. The thought of facing two powerful enemies at once seemed impossible, but Mia didn't let fear paralyze her for long. She spread out maps and diagrams on a makeshift table in their new hideout, an old subway station deep underground, and began explaining what she had learned from the intercepted messages. "The Valens are aquatic," she said, pointing to sketches of sleek, fish-like creatures with glowing fins. "They're aggressive and have better technology than the Scytherians. If they land here, we won't stand a chance unless we find help." Her eyes darted toward Jason, who was pacing back and forth. He stopped when he realized everyone was looking at him. "What?" he asked, though he already knew where this was going. "We need to talk to the Scytherians," Maya said firmly. "If we tell them about the Valens, maybe they'll see us as allies instead of enemies." Sarah immediately objected. "Are you serious? After everything they've done to us? They don't care about humans. They think we're nothing but animals." Her voice rose with anger, but Maya remained calm. "I'm not saying it's ideal," Maya replied. "But if we want to survive, we can't do this alone. We'll never beat both factions by ourselves." Jason rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He glanced at Kyle, who shrugged. "She's got a point," Kyle admitted. "As much as I hate it, teaming up with the Scytherians might be our only shot." After hours of arguing, Jason finally agreed to try. It wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting Laura, Ethan, and everyone else counting on them. The next morning, they approached one of the Scytherian command centers cautiously, carrying white flags made from torn sheets. Jason stepped forward, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. A group of soldiers surrounded them, their weapons trained on the humans. Commander Kale appeared moments later, his tall frame towering over them. His glowing green eyes scanned the group before settling on Jason. "Why are you here?" Kale demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Jason swallowed hard but forced himself to speak clearly. "We know about the Valens. They're coming here, and they're stronger than you think. If they take Earth, your empire will lose its resources. We want to help you stop them." Kale studied him silently for a moment, then turned to one of his officers. After a brief exchange in their strange language, he nodded. "Very well," Kale said. "You will work with us, but betrayal will not be tolerated." Over the following days, humans and Cytherians worked side by side for the first time. Tensions ran high. Cytherian soldiers treated the humans with suspicion, while some members of Jason's group struggled to trust their former oppressors. Despite the friction, progress was made. Using stolen technology and combined knowledge, they developed hybrid weapons capable of combating the Valens' aquatic abilities. Jason found himself working closely with a Cytherian officer named Vorak, who seemed less hostile than the others. Over time, they developed an uneasy respect for each other. Training exercises became intense as they prepared for the inevitable battle. Pilots like Kyle practiced maneuvers designed to target underwater threats, while ground teams rehearsed strategies for defending coastal cities. Laura visited the base often, bringing supplies and tending to the wounded. Seeing her reminded Jason why they were fighting: to protect the people they loved. One evening, as Jason sat with Vorak overlooking the ocean, he asked a question that had been on his mind. "Why did you invade us in the first place?" he asked quietly. Vorak hesitated before answering. "Your species is young and reckless. We thought you would destroy yourselves before becoming a threat. But now—" He paused, glancing at Jason. "Now I see there is more to you than we believed." Their fragile alliance still felt uncertain, but Jason held on to hope. Together, they might just stand a chance against the Valens, and perhaps, after the battle, humanity could prove itself worthy of freedom, not just from the invaders, but from judgment as well. The day the Valens arrived, chaos erupted across Earth's coastlines. Their massive ships descended from the sky, sleek and shimmering like liquid metal, casting eerie reflections on the churning waters below. The first wave of attacks hit without warning. Powerful energy beams tore through coastal cities, sending plumes of smoke and debris into the air. Waves surged unnaturally high, pushed by the Valens' advanced technology, flooding streets and swallowing entire neighborhoods. Jason stood on a hill overlooking Detroit's harbor, gripping his weapon tightly as he watched the destruction unfold. Beside him, Kyle adjusted his headset, preparing for what would likely be the most dangerous flight of his life. "Ready?" Kyle asked, though his voice betrayed his nerves. Jason nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied. Mia had worked tirelessly to ensure their hybrid weapons were distributed among the human fighters, while Sarah coordinated ground teams to defend key locations. Ethan stayed behind with Laura, helping organize civilians into evacuation efforts. Jason felt a pang of guilt leaving them behind, but there was no time to dwell on it. The battle had begun. Kyle climbed into his modified aircraft, its engines roaring to life. Jason joined a group of soldiers, both human and Cytherian, who were tasked with protecting the shoreline. Vorak led the Cytherian forces, barking orders in their guttural language before turning to Jason. "Stay close," Vorak said, his tone firm but not unkind. "We succeed or fail together." As the Valon ships released swarms of aquatic drones, Kyle took to the skies, weaving between enemy fire with incredible precision. His small craft darted around larger Valon vessels, launching missiles that crippled their propulsion systems. Below, Jason and the others fought fiercely to hold their position. The Valon's foot soldiers emerged from the water, humanoid yet scaled, moving with unnatural speed. Human and Cytherian forces clashed with them in brutal hand-to-hand combat, relying on teamwork to overcome the invaders' strength. Ethan's technical skills proved invaluable when one of the hybrid weapons malfunctioned during the heat of battle. He sprinted toward the device, dodging blasts and leaping over fallen debris. With shaking hands, he reprogrammed the weapon just in time, unleashing a devastating pulse that wiped out an entire squad of Valon troops. Cheers erupted among the humans, but Ethan barely noticed. He was already running back to help another team. Despite their efforts, the Valons pushed forward relentlessly. Their true goal became clear when they began targeting underwater structures, a hidden command center buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. If they reached it, they could gain control of Earth's oceans and cripple both human and Cytherian defenses. Jason realized they had no choice but to launch a desperate counterattack. Under Vorek's leadership, Jason and a small strike team boarded a submersible vehicle designed by Mia. It was cramped and risky, but it was their only chance to reach the command center before the Valons did. As they descended into the dark depths, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this might be a suicide mission. Still, he focused on the task ahead. Clutch other words. "Let's move," Kyle shouted, grabbing Jason's arm. They sprinted out of the room, narrowly avoiding blasts from the soldiers' energy weapons. Explosions rocked the lower levels of the tower as Mia and Ethan detonated their charges. The entire structure shook violently, debris raining down around them. They barely made it out alive, collapsing onto the damp grass outside. Smoke billowed into the sky as the tower collapsed behind them. Despite the chaos, Jason couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They had done it. They had struck another blow against the invaders. But their victory was short-lived. As they regrouped with Sarah and the others near the mining site, Mia noticed something odd on her datapad. Encrypted messages were flashing across the screen, intercepted during the attack. Her face went pale as she read them aloud. "There's another alien faction, the Valons. They're coming here, and they see Earth as a battleground." The news hit everyone like a punch to the gut. The Cytherians weren't the only threat anymore. Humanity was about to face an even greater danger, and Jason knew their fight was far from over. The battle against the Valons was fierce, but humanity's determination began to turn the tide. Jason and his team fought side by side with the Cytherians, their combined efforts slowly pushing the invaders back. In the heart of the Pacific Ocean, deep beneath the waves, Jason and Vorek led a desperate assault on the Valon command center. The underwater structure was massive, its walls lined with glowing panels that pulsed like a heartbeat. It felt alive and hostile. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Jason couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. The air, or whatever passed for air in this alien environment, was thick and heavy, making every step feel like trudging through mud. Behind him, Ethan carried a portable EMP device, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched it. "We only get one shot at this," Ethan muttered under his breath. Jason nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. "Then let's make it count." Vorek took the lead, his sharp eyes scanning for threats. When a group of Valon soldiers appeared around a corner, the fight was brutal. Their scales shimmered as they lunged forward, claws splashing through the water. Jason fired his hybrid weapon, the energy pulses striking true and sending one of the creatures spiraling backward. Vorek moved with surprising speed, his blade cutting down another. But the Valons kept coming, forcing the team deeper into the base. Finally, they reached the central chamber, a cavernous room dominated by a towering machine emitting a low hum. Jason recognized it immediately from Mia's descriptions. The core of the Valon command system. If they could destroy it, the entire invasion would collapse. Ethan stepped forward, setting the EMP device carefully on the ground. "I need 2 minutes," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. Jason and Vorek stood guard, firing relentlessly at the Valon reinforcements pouring into the room. Every second felt like an eternity. Just as Ethan shouted, "It's ready," a Valon soldier broke through their line, charging straight toward him. Without hesitation, Ethan threw himself in front of the device, taking the full force of the attack. The blast sent him sprawling, blood clouding the water around him. "No," Jason yelled, rushing to Ethan's side. The young man looked up at him weakly, managing a small smile. "Do it. Finish it," Ethan whispered before closing his eyes for the last time. Tears stung Jason's face as he activated the EMP device. A blinding surge of energy erupted, engulfing the room and silencing the hum of the machine. The lights flickered and died, plunging the chamber into darkness. When they emerged from the wreckage, battered but alive, Kyle was waiting for them in a submersible craft. "Did it work?" he asked anxiously. Jason nodded, though the weight of Ethan's sacrifice pressed heavily on his chest. The Valon fleet above began to retreat, their ships ascending back into space. Humanity had won. For now, back on land, tensions between humans and Cytherians flared again. Zinra, the ex-Cytherian ambassador, attempted to resume control over Earth, but Jason refused to let her. Standing before her holographic projection, he spoke with a quiet fury. "You called us primitive, unworthy, but we just saved your empire. We proved ourselves stronger than you thought." To everyone's surprise, Vorak stepped forward, supporting Jason's words. "He is right," Vorak said. "Humanity has earned respect." Zinra hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. "Earth will remain under Cytherian oversight, but you will have autonomy within your own borders." It wasn't full independence, but it was a start. As Jason walked away from the meeting, he felt a mixture of relief and resolve. The scars of war ran deep, but humanity had proven itself capable of standing tall among the stars. For the first time in months, Jason allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future where Earth could carve out its place in the galaxy. In the weeks that followed the Valon retreat, Earth began to heal. The scars of war were everywhere: crumbled buildings, flooded streets, and fields scarred by mining operations. But there was a new sense of hope in the air. People came together to rebuild, working side by side despite their differences. Jason spent his days helping clear debris from Detroit's streets, his hands blistered but his spirit unbroken. Laura stayed busy caring for displaced families, turning an old community center into a shelter for those who had lost everything. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jason sat on the porch of their small home with Lily, the young orphan they had taken in after the battle. She swung her legs back and forth, clutching a stuffed animal Mia had made for her out of scrap fabric. "Do you think the aliens will come back?" Lily asked, her voice soft but curious. Jason smiled, ruffling her hair. "Maybe someday," he said, "but if they do, we'll be ready." Mia dedicated herself to integrating human technology with alien advancements, working tirelessly in a makeshift lab set up in the subway station. Her experiments led to breakthroughs in energy efficiency and communication systems, ensuring Earth would never again be caught off guard. Kyle trained aspiring pilots, teaching them how to handle both human and hybrid aircraft. His lessons weren't just about flying. They were about courage, teamwork, and thinking on your feet. Though the Cytherians still maintained a presence on Earth, their attitude toward humanity had shifted. Vorak became a frequent visitor to Jason's group, sharing stories of his own struggles and learning more about human culture. Jason found himself growing fond of the Cytherian officer, who had once been an enemy but now felt like an ally. "We have much to learn from each other," Vorak said one day, his glowing eyes reflecting respect rather than disdain. The memory of Ethan weighed heavily on everyone, but it also fueled their determination to build a better future. A memorial was erected in his honor near the ruins of the communication tower, a simple stone engraved with his name. On quiet nights, Jason would visit it, leaving a flower or a small token to remember the boy who had given everything for their cause. As time passed, Earth began to take its first steps onto the galactic stage. Zinra reluctantly granted humanity provisional membership in the Cytherian Empire, acknowledging their role in defeating the Valons. It wasn't full independence, but it was progress. Jason attended negotiations alongside Mia and Sarah, advocating for Earth's rights and pushing for greater autonomy. Slowly but surely, humanity earned a voice among the stars. One night, Jason stood outside under a sky filled with stars, the same sky that had once brought fear and uncertainty. Now, it felt different, full of possibilities. Laura joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Jason hesitated, then smiled. "I'm thinking about how far we've come," he said, "and how much farther we can go." Earth was no longer seen as primitive or weak. Its people had proven themselves resilient, resourceful, and brave. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged stronger because of it. As Jason gazed upward, he imagined what the future might hold, not just for him and his family, but for all of humanity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they had already shown they could overcome anything together. For the first time in a long time, Jason felt at peace. The war had changed everything, but it had also revealed something extraordinary: the strength of the human spirit. And as long as that spirit burned bright, Earth would always find a way to rise.